Welcome, and thank you for joining me in this presentation, Avoiding Burnout. Let's face it, 2020 was a year that tested our resolve, our patience, our tolerance, and our ability to effectively bounce back. If you felt especially tired, cynical, maybe even ineffectual lately, you might be suffering from burnout. And the process of returning to some sort of interior balance must begin with ourselves. It can only be through the deliberate care of ourselves that we can begin to equalize our emotions and recover some amount of steadiness. Let me assure you that nothing I'm about to share with you today is new or original. But these timeless methods can help you restore your ability to meet the challenging times we're facing. Now, it's not a one-size-fits-all remedy. You'll have to adjust the measurements according to what works best for you. So grab a pen and notebook and jot down this handful of strategies. Our first strategy is sleep. As evasive as it can be for some of us, getting enough sleep is the single best way to reduce stress, improve mood, and focus. So why does it elude us so much? First of all, we often know what's good for us, but we don't always partake in it, such as shutting our phones down or leaving them in another room while we sleep. And I get it. We all need to know that our children are safe, or what if someone needs to get a hold of us in an emergency, or we need an alarm clock nearby. I can relate. But waking up in the middle of the night and grabbing our phone is one of the worst things we can do. And here's why. The blue light from our phone stimulates our brain, and this distresses our body because it can't quite decide what to do. Our circadian rhythm informs our body to make melatonin to help us maintain our natural sleep-wake cycle. But the stimulation from the blue light disrupts that, sending a signal to our brain that something is awry. And so it also sends out the stress hormone cortisol. So grabbing our phone sends our brain into an unnecessary battle of wills. And here's another thing. When you sleep for 5 or more consecutive hours, the glymphatic system washes the stress off of your brain. Plus, the information you consume during that day is consolidated, which means your brain makes sense of it and then stores it into your long-term memory. So I know how hard it is to get a good solid night's sleep, but I hope you can now see the benefits of cultivating the right sleep environment and then committing to it. Our second self-care strategy is to prioritize your list of have-tos and must-dos. And let's face it, we all have an inordinate amount of projects, responsibilities, and activities we both have to and want to attend to each day, each week, each month, and each year. And since the inception of social media, it seems everyone's competing for our attention. Our attention span is not finite. There's a limited amount of mental space and durability that we have each day if not replenished. And that's why it's critical we build time into our day to restore it. That might mean setting time limits with our social media apps or the lovely but very chatty colleague so that we can manage our attention. You see, our minds will control us if we let them, but we can also train them to be effective and work for us, not against us. So by prioritizing our minutes and hours, we control what's important and what isn't. And when the world seems to overwhelm us because we can't control what's happening out there, we can begin to assert control in life by organizing our time and mental energy around what matters most. So, what is this self-care and how do we use it and why do we even need it? Well, the answers are simple but not really easy. Self-care is whatever positive activity or action restores you or energizes you. It's what recharges your battery. And embedding these in our lives is critical. We must know how to refill ourselves so that we can conduct ourselves in accordance with our values and integrity and not merely react to the stimuli around us. And this requires planning. Planning nutritious meals so we don't just grab the first candy bar we see. Planning a walk or a workout so we don't just grab the remote for one more episode or one more season. Planning to meet a friend so we don't isolate ourselves. Although, for most of us, a little quiet time is a remedy as well. I'm planning to unplug from all of the attention grabbing headlines, photos, and videos. So spend a minute or two thinking about yourself and cultivate strategies that promote those for your needs. So for me, it's time at the piano or running a couple of miles. And everyone has their own go to moves, so it's not a one size fits all kind of remedy. But find your zen. It is important to your overall well being. And the last strategy is to do simple things. When the world overwhelms us, and it has of late, returning to straightforward and uncomplicated tasks, while sometimes tedious and boring, can distract us long enough to refocus our energies on the things that we can control. So, offering to fold laundry or washing the dishes, while mindless, means you can check out for a while and you don't have to think. You don't have to have an opinion on something. Plus, you're probably making someone else very happy by helping out, so it's an instant crowd pleaser. Now that we've covered a few tips on how to avoid burnout and even stop it in its tracks, what causes burnout? It's often feeling that the world you operate in is overwhelming and out of control. It's feeling overworked and undercompensated and underappreciated. It's a conflict with our inherent values and a breakdown of the community we normally rely on to mitigate those circumstances. So, is it any wonder that most of us are feeling burned out right now? And since our brains naturally default to the negative position, it's pretty much all we can focus on, unless we remind ourselves that there is still good in the world and that we are the ones who create it. Just remember there's no standard amount of care we each need. You kind of have to figure out what works for you and adjust as necessary. But most importantly, we must make self care a daily and deliberate priority. Oh, and one last thing, treat yourself well. You should treat yourself the way you would if you were someone you really cared about. I know that should seem obvious, but it isn't to many people. Often we take such good care of everyone else in our lives that by the time we realize we are depleted, we're at the end of our rope. We look to someone else to take care of us, but our compassion and care really must start with ourselves. So remember that you're doing the best that you can. Remember to keep your inner self talk positive, and remember that emotions and circumstances are fleeting. They come and go, so let them. I believe we each have a light to shine in this world, and I believe it is my unmistakable duty to help you find yours. I hope you enjoyed this brief presentation and that you'll choose to join me for the next one. And I hope you continue to choose one positive thought over a negative one positive action over an indifferent one. I hope you choose not who you are by default, but who you want to be, because your power is always in your choice. Stay shiny, my friends, stay brilliant and bright, and use your light to change the world. Thanks for joining me.